Welcome to the Small Town Podcast. This is Season 2. I'm Monica Lacey, and I'll be your host for some engaging discussions with artists working in contemporary art in Prince Edward Island. Each episode focuses on a different medium, and I bring two artists into conversation around it and their process. This town is small as PEI's only artist-run centre, incorporated in 2010, and we are dedicated to helping foster sustainability for contemporary arts practice in this province. This project is made possible via the support of Innovation PEI through the PEI Culture Action Plan. We recorded these sessions on traditional unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Big thank you to Devin Ross at Thin Slice Media for the sound recording, editing, and music. For more information on each of the artists I speak with, please see the show notes for each episode. This episode takes us into the three-dimensional realm, where I discuss sculpture and installation art with Sarah Saunders and Sandi Hartling. These two guests have some of the most care-filled approaches to their art that I've ever witnessed, and it was a real joy to hear about their process. So welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks.
And just to get started, I'll ask you just to introduce yourself. And this is just like the nutshell introduction. So anything you want to say about how you identify as an artist, the work that you make, and then we'll get more in depth later on. So if you want to just say your name and anything else you want to add about the work that you make.
Okay.
Anybody can start.
My name is Sarah Saunders. The work I make, I would call small sculptural objects. They are predominantly made of clay, porcelain in particular. They are easily recognizable as things you'd be familiar with, so silver spoons, textiles, furs. They are things that are around my home and have been in my family often for a long time. So for me, they're connectors to other people's presence in my history and my place in that history. So I either work with them directly or I work with them as inspiration for new objects and sometimes images as well.
Yeah, if somebody's not already looking up your website after that description. Yeah, that's great. And Sandi?
Sandi Hartling, and I'm what I'd call a part-time artist in Charlottetown here. I would say my work is fairly interdisciplinary. I use do a lot of installation work and experiment with sound, video, text, drawing, painting, and kind of different ways of combining those things. But I would say that at the very core of my work is an interest in like how we interpret the information around us and then take that data and translate it into ideas and perceptions of truth.
Also so intriguing.
Yeah. Well said.
I'm familiar with your work, but I'm excited for the people listening who aren't, who are like, what?
Yeah.
I need to see that immediately. So next I want to ask you about, like, how did you get started as an artist? What has your trajectory been like? How did it all start? How did you find your way to what you're making now? And again, anybody can jump in.
You go ahead.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I think that the question, like, how did you sort of become an artist? I've never really been able to answer, but I could say maybe that what I enjoy about being an artist is that it allows me to explore different topics and areas that I'm interested in, so that I can research optics and, philosophy and art history, and so there's a broad range of topics. And otherwise, in terms of a sort of trajectory.
Yeah.
I would say that my practice has sort of happened in waves, maybe. Always being kind of employed part or full-time in other positions. I would say that at different stages in my life I've had more or less time to devote to my art practice. And so I would say that, those stages where I'm able to commit more time to my practice, obviously I feel that I develop more in those time periods, and then the slower periods are sort of more just sort of percolating and, things sort of piling up, and then, maybe there's the opportunity, and then those things all come together and they come towards a piece, and then it slows back down again, and,
And you did go to art school.
I did.
Right? Yeah. And do you feel like you were always looking at the world through this lens, or was it something that sort of dawned on you of like, oh, I want to make some art? Or maybe that's hard to know.
Maybe it is. I don't know. I think I was always kind of intimidated about the idea of going to art school because I didn't enjoy making representational art when I was younger. And so I was very nervous going to art school, thinking that maybe this wasn't for me. And I think I found out, that I just fit into a different category of art making. So in that sense, I feel like those experiences and things, have the past experiences did lead me there, or interest led me to art making.
Yeah. And Sarah, what about you? What has your journey been like to get to the work that you're making now?
Long and convoluted for a lot of people, I think. Art was always part of my life. I would say growing up, my mother was very artistic and encouraged that. And we did some art lessons at the center, and if there were things on the go, she would find them for us, and we did a lot at home. The idea of being an artist, I would say, I didn't think about that a lot. Initially, after high school, for instance, I was more interested in ballet and went to ballet school, but then also enjoyed school and schoolwork and science, so ended up actually doing a degree in biology, and that was probably my interest, but also something that my family would be more comfortable with, as opposed to saying I'm going to art school. So art was sort of a separate thing that was mine. I drew and painted, and so I think it took a while to convince myself that that's something I could have as substance in my life. And again, I took a few different routes to get there, thinking like, how does it fit with science? Should it be scientific illustration? But I do recall like finishing biology and deciding either you carry on down this road and go do a master's in something, or you jump ship now and go to Paris and study art. So yeah, even then it was still very much more of a fine art basis, I think, for me. And when I decided to go to art school, I chose NASCAD, not fully realizing that it was a particularly conceptual school. And got there and was very quickly set down different roads than what I had intended when I got there, and enjoyed them all. I loved sort of the critical input. I loved the critical thinking. So yeah, I didn't really know what I was going for, I think, when I went, but I did enjoy it and found it elements there that I didn't expect, that I think influenced the directions I went.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah.
And did you come to your ceramic work through that, or was that later?
That was later. In a lot of ways, I guess I would say I'm somewhat self-taught. Even though I went to art school, a lot of what I was doing there was design-based. There was still this practical element to it that, you could be employed with this. And I found it intriguing. It was a lot of semiotics and things that I really liked. So after I was working for a few years in the design field, And at a point in my life where, again, you're kind of going like, what do I really want in my life? How do I want to live? And, you know, what things do I want to be doing with my time? And I kept coming back to, I want to be able to have the freedom to execute these ideas and things that I'm thinking about and make objects that matter to me. And how do I do that? Mm-hmm. And it was largely maybe go back to Canada. I was living at that time in Amsterdam, and go back there, find a quiet place where you can focus on your own brain and not be inundated with all this work that other people are doing, that you're seeing in galleries, that you're being influenced by. Just go find some space, listen to yourself, and figure out what you want to make and how you want to do it. So that's what I did.
And that was coming back here.
Yeah.
And did you grow up here originally?
I did grow up here.
Yeah. So it was coming home.
It was an easy place to come back to, and I knew the life that would be available to me here, or in the Maritimes in general, in a lot of ways, and that it could be quiet enough that you could make that space. And if you're going to live precariously, you could do it here in relative ease in some ways. So,
it's a good place to have your income be speculative.
Right.
It's a soft landing compared with other places. Yeah. Thank you for that. So what is in a perfect world, you have the perfect space, you have all the time, you have like the music you want to listen to, like what is your ideal working process? You get an idea, and then what?
Read.
Read? Oh, nice. That's where you start?
Probably.
And in a research way, or just to kind of get your mind
sometimes,
working?
It could be fictional or nonfiction, but just to sort of, if there's something about that's, about that topic. I might find that in a novel, or I might find that in an encyclopedia. I
love that approach. And then from there, would you start to kind of sketch or write, or what's next?
Usually always writing. So the sketches, there's very little sketching. I would say mostly it's about recording ideas that I have around that topic. And sort of creating like a sort of web of things that are kind of related and I'm thinking about, and some of that is very research based, kind of notes and references to books and things like that. But in the perfect world, what would my sort of studio and process be like? I think maybe I would have a lot of access to information, because sometimes the topics that I'm interested in, it's hard to find certain references to those things. So a lot of access to information, and a very nice quiet space with big tables and lots of places for me to like sort of organize those thoughts and writings, and then sketches eventually do happen in some form.
And do you like having kind of the drawn out time that having another work, it sort of forces you into that, where your projects are likely taking a bit longer than if you just had all the time.
Yeah.
But is that actually a part of your process, or would you love to have just 6 months with nothing to do but work on that project?
Yeah, I think that is appealing. It sounds appealing,
right?
But I think you might be right that those other experiences and those other things that you encounter, they do influence. Those other things do influence the work. And so because I can be inspired visually as well, it's and so working in construction, you see a lot of wooden things, arrangements and patterns and things that end up in my work. And so I feel like if I wasn't working, I wouldn't see those things or have those experiences, and then they wouldn't make it to the sketches and the thoughts. And
That's interesting. No, I'm really interested in the influence of like time and space on the work, and for me, it's really kind of a slow cooker experience. Like if I have more time, the work doesn't get made faster. I still need, I need the time for it to like percolate and kind of to draw the juice out of it. Like you can't pull the taffy quickly. You know? It needs
it needs the time.
So I'm just interested in it in that way.
Maybe it matters too if you feel like you have control over that time. Like if your other work is construction and you're in the middle of something, and then I don't know how it works for you, but you get a call. It's like, oh, there's a job. We need you now. And you're like, no, I want another 2 weeks. Or, that I could see being an influence on whether or not you can enjoy that back and forth or not,
Yeah. I think I do work well too with deadlines. I think that helps a lot.
Deadlines.
Very as much as I hate them,
I know.
But they really do a lot.
Yeah, it makes a container. Like it helps bring the infinite ideas into finite space.
Well, and other parameters do that too. And it's funny when we were doing this, and initially it was supposed to be somebody else, and then you said it was going to be Sandy or something, and it made me think. For me, and this is a bit of a different topic, but as far as parameters go with projects, one time you organized a project, Exquisite, where different people all did things.
Yeah.
And I remember, the invitation came for that. I was like, oh, I don't really work that way, responding to other people and stuff. I was like, oh, and I was like, no, that would be good. Good for you, do it. So I did, and I got your piece as the one to follow from.
That's right.
Yeah. So I was thinking, isn't that serendipitous? And here we are. But, and conveniently, it was one. I mean, I would have worked with whatever. That was the whole point, and to respond. But yours aesthetically was such a nice fit.
I'm trying to remember what
it was beautiful. It was a gray paper with a white line into some text, and then it ran off the other end.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh yeah, this is totally my world. I can work with this lovely gestural line and everything.
That's so neat.
But that was nice for me in a way too. It was a good learning thing to have those parameters of this is the project, this is the scale, these are the things, and how you work. So in a similar way, work and other sources, other things in your life can play that role a little bit too.
Yeah.
Or deadlines do, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Sarah, what's your process like when you
in that beautiful ideal world you gave us?
Or even if you want to speak about how it actually plays out and how you wish it played out, or if there's a discrepancy there.
That ideal studio space or whatever, sure, would be lovely. My space, which is great, makes me a part-time artist as well. I'm closing it up right now. It's really only a summer space. So the winter time, I'm thinking a lot and percolating and doing a lot of that stuff. But the ideal space for me is that being able to get my hands in some clay, get some stuff out, the things that are inspiring me or that I'm thinking about, or just rummaging through stuff and going like, oh, why do I hang on to this? What do I like about this? What is it with this thing? And putting my hands on them and trying some things, going, oh, maybe I want it to be an image, or maybe I want it to be this, and trying it and putting it up and looking at it and go, no, that's really trite, or something else, what it needs something. And so there's a physical element to a big warm space that you can put stuff in and touch it and go, oh, isn't this, it feels a certain way, what is it I like about that feel? So there'd be that. The other part to how I work is that percolating, and partially it's dictated by that my workspace is sort of limited. So a lot of percolating goes on, and which can be useful because then when you go to make stuff, you're drawing upon that, or you're recognizing things when they happen in the work and going, oh yes, this is the road I want to go down, or I'm after more delicacy or less literalness, or whatever it is you've been percolating with for a while.
Yeah. And for each of you, do other people, are other people a part of your process? Do you find you like to be in conversation and talk about the ideas with anyone, or is it kind of all secret until it's ready to show? Or does it depend?
I don't think I'd say secret. I would say it always feels like a fair bit of effort for me to make my work, and I'm so busy with that effort and process. There isn't room. I'm not looking for other input until I get my own input dealt with first and execute something. And then, yes, I welcome intelligent input for sure. But during the process, I think it's enough of a process to be dealing with my own brain and my own thoughts and traveling my own road, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of fully understand that. Because it sounds like we have sort of a very similar kind of analytical approach of sort of sorting ideas or textures, or like, what am I doing with this thing or that thing, or what do I like about this?
Right, asking yourself that all the time.
Yeah, you gotta, there's so much why involved, and then pulling all that information together and dealing with that is, it's a lot of mental labor. And so very similarly, there's not much room for anything else. But at some point when I feel like, okay, this or maybe this, or, when I can get it to a point where it's limited options, then I can, then I welcome input. But I would also say that I have a very different process when I work with Max Knechtel. So he and I have an artist collaboration called Average Height. And our process is very different, and we usually just sit around and have a couple drinks and talk and come up with ideas and, make them as ridiculous as we want, and then boil them down and just sort of like toss them around, and what about this and that, and what works for this. And so it's very loose and very fun. And I actually think that benefits my own personal practice to that process of doing that with him. Allows me to kind of be a little less analytical sometimes with my work. Yeah, because sometimes I can get really caught up in that, and I find it actually detrimental to the piece. So that it's almost like overworking something, except I haven't even gotten to the work yet.
I know what you mean. You can overthink it. Yeah, and you're critiquing it while you're thinking it. Yeah. Before you've even made something.
Gotten anywhere with it.
It's true. That's interesting.
That's nice to have that balance of just the really loose, like everything goes. Everything goes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then to bring that, and maybe some of your precision comes into your work with him, and it cross-pollinates in a nice way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to, one of the reasons I was like excited to have you both on together is I feel like you've done some similar things where you've worked like very, very small and like quite large, and you've both done things like in kind of the White Cube Gallery, but also in an outdoor festival that's really being interacted with. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about scale and what that experience has been like for you, and are you more drawn in one direction or the other, or are they just really different streams in your practice? So just to think about that question of would you like to be doing more giant projects, or is there the intimacy of the small object, and just I just wanted to hear a bit about your experience with installation versus like bookworks, which you both made, like versus things that are very small and intimate and have like a quieter energy. Yeah, it's kind of a big
it'd be nice
topic,
to have staff.
Staff,
yeah,
ooh.
for the big projects.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I love the big projects like Art in the Open, where it was my first chance to do, like many people, I think, the big outdoor temporary pieces. I would have envisioned things like that many times, but never have known where to jump off to do them. Mm-hmm. So Art in the Open was great for that. It was very fun. I loved being able to do that, take those ideas and have a chance to execute them. I did feel every time I did a project, like, man, now I'd really like to redo that again at like the real scale I meant, or without this element of, something helping that was there. It was never as clean or as perfect or as beautiful as you intended. And how could it be on your first shot at something? Yeah. So that has been a limiting factor with going further with that, where the ability, the cost, the support systems, trucks and cranes and transportation and heavy lifters and people to help move the stuff around is the limiting factor, where it's just too discouraging. And when it's only once in a while, it's just too much work to round that all up and figure it out. And one year I spent more time trying to arrange that stuff for the project than I would ever have spent on the project. Oof. And we ended up not even doing it because of that. And so it's still sitting there in that pile of unrealized stuff where it's like, like the management of that stuff is just a whole world where I go, no, I'd like to be the one envisioning it, planning it, executing the details, making the refinements, and somebody else is doing all the logistics.
Yeah, then you just sort of pass it off and okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant factor.
Yeah.
That large work. And something I think that when the audience sees it, they don't think about that at all. They don't see that side of it. They don't think, oh, I wonder how they got a crane in that space to set up that work.
And you almost have to make that your practice to get good at those skills and develop the networks, like even if it's locally, like to know the people to call when you need that help or whatever it is. Like, it's a lot to do for a few one-offs, I found.
Very challenging.
What was your experience like? Like, you're also a builder, so you've been making a lot of your large-scale stuff yourself.
It's true, but I think most of my large-scale works predated my schooling and my starting carpentry. So that was sort of what pushed me in the direction to study carpentry and to get into construction, was because it was the stuff that I wanted to be able to do myself was actually what I was hiring carpenters to do for me. And there was a lot else that, all the other components of it that I was managing, but I was really concerned, when you get to a big scale, safety is a huge issue and huge liability.
Right.
And that terrifies me. So I would never want to, or I didn't want to take on that responsibility, not knowing sort of construction techniques at that scale. But that was frustrating. And because I really enjoyed doing large works and wanted to do more of them, that is sort of what got me going in that direction. But also it's what I enjoy doing outside of my art practice too. So it sort of benefits both. And, I would say the same thing, like logistically, those, transportation issues and the whole other management of it
and the cost that goes with it.
The cost.
That more than obliterates anything you ever make on a project.
Oh,
so,
yeah. That's...
Right, and I guess so often they're being shown on a single day.
Yeah.
One day.
At an outdoor festival. Yeah.
And if they're not, then they need to be, then there's a whole other level.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Of
Yes.
securing them and making sure the safety is there. And,
But I would say that in terms of the differences between small scale work and large scale work, I think as much as I would like to do more large scale work, I think it's also important. I think they are kind of two different streams, but they overlap, you know, so that I wouldn't imagine being able to do something large if I hadn't sort of done it small first.
Right.
Yeah. And then, you know, pulling together those components and, okay, this here and that there, and then blowing that up, and then, you know, how does that support this, and blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, and then those elements of the installation. For me, I'm really interested in the framework and, you know, the visibility of the process and that sort of thing becomes a part of the piece too, you know, which I don't get on the small scale. So,
because it's different structures you're working with,
Exactly.
like you can't work with them small.
Yeah. But they influence one another still, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. When you've worked large scale, do you make a miniature version?
I have
do you make
sometimes.
A
Yeah. Sort of a rough idea, not to scale or anything like that, but just so I can kind of visualize how things are going to sit together. And
Just keep going.
But some materials too are different materials at a large scale than a small scale, and you really have to just execute it large.
Yeah.
To know what it's going to do. You can
true.
go, well, oh, if it's this big and I'm hoping it will do this, but until you have purchased that material, enough of it at that scale to do it, and then go, oh, actually it doesn't droop, or it does droop, or it does whatever I wasn't expecting. So.
Like the way a toothpick isn't a 2x4. It just doesn't behave the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I agree with what you're saying about them being connected. And mine, which I haven't done that many large scale, but I would say, and I think for me the first few times I did, or even thought about what I would do, it was that interest in what are my ideas that can go big, that are still my ideas in my small work. Like, what's the relationship? Because they're very different objects, or things, or sculptures, or whatever they are. But what are they sharing idea-wise that still feels like me and my thoughts? And that's fun and interesting.
Would you put your spoon prints in that category? Like, I think of those as large scale work. They're huge.
That's true. They are large in the context of my small work. I think more landscape pieces, outdoors in particular, as like massive or big, where you can think really big and go, well, what would it be like to be this big? And people have to confront it. And it's 3 times as big as people. That's big. But I agree, the spoon prints are a version of large within the context of my work, or what they would normally be seen as. And the fur prints, some of those are larger too, that bring out more intimate details of something at a large scale, which is part of what I like about that.
So I wanted to ask, what would you say like are the key ingredients to your work? If you were to just kind of give some keywords they've got to be there for it to really feel like it's yours.
I think I often see things recurring in my work, whether or not I'm aware of that, you know. And so text would be one. I think for me, you know, because I'm interested in perceptions of reality and definitions, I think I enjoy using text because text really highlights the possibility for misinterpretation. And I don't think that's a bad thing when I say misinterpretation. I think, that there's multiple understandings to be read from one thing. So I think text plays a big part of my work for that. And I also think humor often comes into my work, and sometimes it's just sometimes it's intentional, and then other times I think it just develops and it's just kind of inherent in the work, because a lot of my work is about seeking answers when there are none. There are no clear answers. There's only questions, and I know that going in. And I can only expect to get so far with it. And so there's this sort of humorous aspect, or kind of absurdity, to the act of I think of art making too, not just of looking for answers, but also art making. And I think that translates to life too. That there's this sort of it's a big question mark.
Yeah. And Sarah, do you want to speak to that? Like, what would you say are the ingredients in your work? The things, the threads that run through it all.
Right. Gosh. That's kind of a hard one. I'm not sure why it's hard. I think maybe what other people see, I don't know how similar it is to what I see or what I'm going for. Like, I guess the things I would hope to distill into all my work would be maybe more formal things, even like a visual elegance, simplicity. I'm always trying to either remove something that doesn't need to be there, or make sure I'm not adding something to force it, and what you can reduce it to that's the most pure form of the thing that will move you or draw you into it. So that kind of simplicity I'm after. Obviously delicacy, I guess I would have to say that's pretty obvious in a lot of my work. And I hope, a bit like Sandi's, that it brings in a quality of life. It's about life itself. Is this? It's delicate, it's fine, it's refined if you want it to be. It's those elements.
And especially, a lot of those objects, like you said previously, are coming from your own life. So
right.
That sort of
that link through it.
Link,
you become a mediator for that.
Yeah.
So, once the work is made, what has your experience been like finding opportunities, venues, curators, people who want to then deliver it to the world? Has it been grueling? Has it been easy? Does it go back and forth? What has that experience been like?
I think for me, my process often works that I won't begin sort of the labor of the project until I have a confirmation that it will be exhibited somewhere. Partially that's because I can't afford the materials and, I don't have a studio space aside from what's the space inside my home, and, so just logistically it wouldn't make sense. So I think in that way it sort of solves that problem, right? So my work previous to that just exists as a big idea. And then if someone says, yeah, okay, go for it. And then I do it. But, there's other drawing pieces and, smaller works, book works and things like that I would like to be seen, in other places. And I think partially I haven't done enough work on that front. I don't really have that kind of time.
To do the research of...
finding out the calls and submitting it. That's a lot of work.
It's hard to be everything in your own life.
Yeah. And when I had more time, I did, and that was rewarding. But I can't say currently that I'm maybe frustrated by a lack of opportunity, because I'm not really finding any for myself. So
Right.
Yeah.
You've got no one to blame but yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. I am frustrated by the amount of space it takes up in my house, though.
Yeah, the studio space is always like an ongoing thing, I think, for all of us. Yeah.
I would say I feel like I've been very lucky, actually, in that respect. I don't make a lot of work, as you know, and I don't make work quickly. So over the time that I've been making work, I think I've been very fortunate that the work I've made, somebody has managed to see it who was able to do things with it on my behalf, or invite me to a place where I could do something with it. So in spite of not having made much work early on, the work I made was put in fairly good shows that then other people would see it and inquire about me or what I'm doing next. So it's a bit of a snowball effect that if you're lucky to get it rolling, it's great, and one thing can lead to another. So I feel like, yes, I have been lucky, and I've never been that person who can send out a ton of proposals. I just don't. It would be too much work and too discouraging. So I've been way more selective when I have done them, and I've had to feel like it feels appropriate. It feels appropriate for me to show in that gallery, even to approach them, and that they might feel like I'm appropriate for them. So I guess I've been selective and had good luck. And it's something that you have to maintain. And I go through waves where I just want to do the work. Right now, I just want to do some work. I don't have any work to talk to people about, so I don't have ideas to give them, because until I make some work, I don't know what I'm saying or what the work is. So right now, I just want to make work and not worry about grant proposals or show proposals or anything like that, and take my chances. And if it sits around for a while and nobody has seen it, I'll deal with that, and I'll have to see if somebody wants to see it, do something with it.
Yeah.
The other part, I guess, for your work piling up, for me, that at different times I've looked at is, could this possibly be sold? Should it be in a commercial gallery? Is there anything I can do that could possibly go in a commercial gallery, that people could handle it and touch it and take it home, and it doesn't fall apart on the way home? And that type of thing. And how do I figure that out? And how does this even get displayed if it cracks as soon as you touch it? And all those elements of display around my work, or how does it get framed up or not? Those big sheets of paper that spoons are on, I don't want them framed. And stuff like that, that you just, periodically I'll think about spending time figuring that out, and I try to, and I never get a solution that I like. Those little porcelain folded shirts that I don't want to box them all in and have them permanently attached to something. I want them, they're objects. I don't want them glued to some other thing. So I always hit a wall with that stuff, that I just can't figure it out. So I back away from the whole commercial world and stay in the public gallery space, which means you're back to that, sending in proposals, waiting in line, hoping, the jurors are up for you or whatever.
And that it ships safely.
Yes.
That it ships safely,
Or that you can drive it there.
Yeah, lots of factors. So right now in your studios, what part of the cycle are you in? Are you don't have a new idea but are ready to kind of like make some tea and sit in there and let the ideas come? Are you in the middle of a project? You just finished something? What are you working on right now?
Well,
funny you should ask.
Yeah. I just finished a drawing installation.
It's so awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, curated by Monica Lacey. And, just making your mark.
It's at the Guild right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just finished installing that 2-3 days ago. And I was pretty nervous about that piece, because that is a really good example of something that I've been thinking about, the components of it, for years. And none of that has had a life yet. And so this was the first time that I was able to take all those components and put them together, and it was what I had hoped that it would be, and so that was a very satisfying process. And it also felt it was satisfying too, to just kind of purge it out of my brain finally. Like, oh, that's great. Okay, I've done that now, and I think there's lots more to do in that vein. And I'm excited about that, but I think for right now, I'm just going to enjoy the satisfaction of accomplishing that after years.
And it took that opportunity to put all those elements together.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think it would have happened. I don't think it would have happened without being approached for the exhibition.
Awesome.
So
That's true.
yeah.
It's funny, when I did approach you for the exhibition, I had no idea what you were working on, but I knew that you would have something that had been percolating for years. I was like, I know Sandi, and she will have something. And she's like, oh, I've waited years to put this together.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's so nice.
So I'm
really
glad I was able to help you have a venue for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. It's really, we'll put a link in the show notes to the documentation once it's all done. What about you, Sarah? What are you working on?
Well, I'm doing my usual trick of, just when it's time to close up my studio for the winter, deciding I want to make something and kind of getting excited about making it. So I did manage to get some work in a kiln a week ago that I thought was just an experiment. I was just like, oh, well, I'll get this out of my brain. It was an idea I had about some textile work that I can't quite recall how it came about, because I thought I was doing some things with thin pieces of clay and putting gestures into the clay, arranging them in different ways. And somehow I switched and went back to actually working with real textiles and putting them in porcelain and then shaping the textiles. But I think, I forget where it came about, and it had to do with scrunching them and treating them quite differently than the other ones I've done that have been much more carefully folded. And I just wanted to experiment and see if it would even work in these containers I was putting them in. And it did, and they came out as a kiln. And I was like, oh, I really like these. These are awesome, and it's so cool. So I was really excited by them, and the way the light was moving around on them. And they have this kind of, the textiles are very contorted and twisted and scrunched up, but at the same time they're all in these very formal blocks. So they're almost like little grids of stuff. So they're compressed in these invisible forms in a way. So it's like this all compressed energy. So they're intriguing, and I'm into them.
We're intrigued.
Like, tell us more.
Now I have to close up my space for the winter.
Don't do it.
I know. So, yeah. So I'll see what I can figure out, if I can squeeze another week or two out there in the freezing cold or not. Or,
you don't need a kitchen. Just
it's true.
Get inside.
I have done that, and it's quite a pain.
Yeah,
not
challenging. Yeah.
Clay's a tough one in the cold weather because your hands are wet for so long.
Yeah.
But that work sounds really exciting.
Well, and it's also, it will be nice to sort of, it was a good head change, and I am intrigued with sort of moving more abstractly which is why I thought I was going to work just with clay sheets and not textiles again that bring all their own stuff. But I like sort of being on the fence a little bit, somewhat abstract, but also elements of recognizability. And I think there's a range there that I can roam around in. So.
And the textiles burn off in the kiln?
They do, but they are still visually textiles.
Right.
So the objects look like textiles, but there's
that.
no fabric in them. It's pure porcelain.
And when you're choosing the textiles to use, is it stuff of your own, or do you gather things that you don't have
These
any
are,
attachment?
because that's what I had around.
Okay.
I have collected, if I know I'm working on certain things, I will collect for that. But generally, there's enough textile around your own place between old t-shirts. These were a lot of just old stuff like that.
Such an interesting transmutation process where you're actually completely destroying the original, but then preserving it forever in this other material.
Yeah. And sometimes, like my earlier work, that was a very precious thing. It was like to destroy something precious, not to preserve it in my mind, but to destroy it in a way, keep a sketch of it. I think of them as like sketches of it. Whereas this is more the opposite, about not being precious, about the stuff to an accumulation, because they're all like compressed. Like I said, like the way there's too much of everything in the world, things get piled up and compressed, and people included. So these feel like lives, and how do we treat lives, and jamming them all in and cramming them around and treating them rudely.
Yeah, I could like feel it when you were like talking about it. Like I could feel it in my body. Yeah.
Oh, exciting. And where are we at for time? Just before I...
We're at an hour.
Okay, so I'll maybe choose one last question. Oh, just for fun, what is, just as a final question, what would you say is the best thing and the worst thing about being an artist? What is the thing that keeps you doing it, and the thing that makes you wish that you maybe had, been a biologist or like a full-time carpenter or something instead?
Yeah.
Or challenges and benefits if you want.
Right. I think one of the challenges is I call it crazy brain.
Yes.
I know that.
Yeah. So when something's in there, it's in there until it can find a way out, and that can be years of thinking about and processing an idea or something, and then you might do it and it's not what you wanted, and you got to try again. So there was definitely time periods in my life where I would fall asleep thinking about an idea and trying to sort it out, and wake up thinking about the idea, trying to sort it out, and feel like I got no rest at all. And then have to go to work, but I think maybe there's a benefit to that too, because it's sort of an engagement with the world that I might not feel if I weren't an artist. Maybe. Yeah. And that's just a side effect. Right. That's an unfortunate side effect of that.
Right. So two sides of the same same experience. Yeah, I like that.
I was kind of thinking there were no bad sides to it. Like, it feels like it's just who you are, and it's how you are in the world. So it's just being alive. You see things a certain way, you feel things a certain way, and you want to do something with that feeling or those thoughts. So it's just a natural impetus. But the bad side, I think, for me sometimes, I think a downside is feeling like maybe my role in the world isn't valuable enough, or valuable for the world I'm in. Is this the right thing to be doing at this time in this world? Is this the most helpful I can be in the world? I ask myself that quite a bit. And you have to have that conversation then. Is it selfish that I'm doing this? And address that and either decide, yes, it is, or maybe it is right now, maybe I'll go do something else, or maybe I'll find a resolution with that. Or why am I making this work then, and of what value is it? So whether or not you get that from the world around you or from yourself, I question that for myself and try to address it. And so it can feel, I guess, like a negative, but...
Is it almost like guilt? Like sometimes you feel guilt?
Guilt, or just wondering, I guess, too, because not everybody seems to value art the same way or experience it the same way. So in some milieus, it can feel like what you're doing is oblivious, or it's not resonating with people and providing solace or questions or inspiration or something that you hope it does. So that, how do you feel like it's valuable to the world if it's only valuable to a small part of the world?
Right.
And I do think ultimately it's valuable. I think
Yeah.
it's an expression of being a human being and all kinds of things. But I have to go through that with myself and discuss it periodically.
Right. Yeah.
I guess because it's not readily reinforced around you a lot. So, yeah, I feel like, I have to have that conversation with myself.
I have to say it's been really nice this year to, because of everything that's happened in the world in 2020, to see so many people talking about how art saves lives. How art is the thing that when everything seems disastrous, you can listen to a piece of music, you can look at a sculpture, you can, watch a dance piece and remember kind of what it is to be human, and that we will endure, and that we can get through it if we can find like the beauty and the understanding that comes through through the arts, and nothing else delivers that. And it's been nice to see that just mentioned by ordinary people who've never had a connection to art before, but all of a sudden are like, wait a second, we need this.
Yeah, taking
this
the time
helping.
to realize that and express it.
Yeah. So, maybe we can all feel a little less guilty about being in the studio now that it's become very clear, I think, to everyone how important it is.
Yeah, that's right. And so many people are doing and tackling projects at home now themselves.
And wanting their hands on something or wanting to, rebuild things around them.
Yes.
Experiment.
And just express a different part of themselves than what comes out in a job that maybe isn't meaningful to you, or things that don't give you any creative expression. So thank you both so much for this conversation. It's been really beautiful to have on this autumn day, and just to think about the cozy winter ahead, and thinking about ideas and writing them down, and I appreciate you taking the time and energy to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
this was fun.
It was.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for being a part of our community. For more information about This Town is Small and the work that we do, as well as our current programming, please go to our website, thistownismall.com, or follow us on social media, on Instagram at This Town is Small PEI, and on Facebook at This Town is Small.